What's going on, family? What's going on? Shabbat Shalom. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. I am. I know it's late. I generally don't, I haven't done lives in a long time, seem like, especially one this late. I did a live the other day, but, now my lives are coming few far and in between, doing a lot of ministry work and so things like that. So just don't really have time to get on to do a lot of things. I kind of leave that to everybody else who is kind of doing their lives and things like that. Shalom to everybody. This Zoom thing is great. I've been blessed to be able to have a Zoom. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody that's tuning in and whatnot. So I know that people saw it earlier, and so blessings to you all. Thank you all for tuning in. Part one was definitely an icebreaker. It's something I just wanted to put out there. This one is not going to be long as well. I got to get ready for tomorrow for Shabbat service, for Sabbath service. And so I'm excited tomorrow to be with the family and really get into some of the lesson on tomorrow. I know that the Most High is going to move through all of our assemblies and congregations. And so I'm excited about it. So thank y'all for joining. Thank y'all for staying up with me late. It is 11:05. So let's get into this. As I was saying earlier, just really talking about the whole Desean Jackson thing and the anti-Semitic comments. He retweeted or he tweeted a a controversial quote, and there's different opinions about uh, this document or meme or whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. There's conflicting conversation. Okay, whether this is authentic or this is not authentic. That Hitler said that the true America would be in an uproar. They found out that the true Jews were Negroes in America that they had enslaved, that they had taken from the west coast of Africa as well as from different parts of Africa, that they were the true Israelites, and that those in which he was playing judge and jury over, that they were not the true Israelites or Jews per se. And so the thing is, when you begin to look at that, you see there has been over the years, ever since the establishment of 1948 for the Jewish people within the land of Israel or Palestine, there has been a political mount of protecting them. A lot of it isn't geared towards that these are God's chosen people or anything of that nature. A lot of it is geared towards, some of it is geared towards that, depending on who you're talking to, depending on what fight a person is fighting for on behalf of them. Some is for political ramifications. Some of them, you have the Christians here in America are heavily, influenced, and I don't want to say all of them, but there's Zionist Christians that are, heavily protective and pushing. John Hagee is one of them, in dealing with Zionism and pushing, believing that you must protect Israel if you want God's blessing. And you also have a large group of Jewish people that are anti-Zionists, that don't believe in an established state in the land of Israel. So it's not just all of that. But Desean Jackson tweet that he retweeted or put out has gotten him into a world of trouble. His owner is Jewish. The guy who drafted him is Jewish. Majority of the owners of teams in the NFL, as well as teams in the NBA, as well as all of these different people within entertainment, many of them are Jewish. And so when you begin to look at that, it comes to a time in dealing with now people receiving information. And within the information in which they're receiving, people are just hitting the reshare button. It may not be anything that they mean behind it, or they may not be trying to get any type of message out. But in today's time, in the climate in which we live, it's come to a point where everything that you either share, retweet, post, whether it's on social media, whether it's through YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, no matter what it is, you have to make sure that these things are factual. You have to make sure that you vetted these things. You have to make sure all of this has been done properly so you can get an understanding. Now, let me get to the point here. Everyone is in an uproar. You see Max Kellerman from ESPN from First Take. He was on the show, having a show with Stephen A. Smith a few days ago. He, let the world know that he was Jewish. Julian Edelman has come out talking that he's Jewish. You have all of these people that are coming out and saying they're Jewish, and that, that these things, he shouldn't have quoted Hitler. If he wanted to empower Black people in some form of fashion, he should have never used Hitler. Hitler shouldn't be the one, should be used as an example. He's a terrible person. He did a lot of terrible things. And all of these things, and everybody's coming out, is starting to the changing of the guard. For a while, okay, you Black people, you Negroes, y'all had something that y'all were coming at the system with, and now they found a token to be able to reflip the conversation to take it away from that. Now, mind you, the owner is talking about maybe doing something, suspending him, whatever it is. They may even kick him out the league, all this type of stuff behind this now. Mind you, this is the same team and the same owners when Riley Cooper, during the time that Michael Vick was playing out of the University of Florida, was at a concert and he called the security guard a nigger. Let's just be all 100 with that's what he said. This is the same sources. These are the same sports writers that nobody made a big deal about him using the N-word and calling someone that. You know what they did? They sent him to a little rehab. After they sent him to the little rehab or to the little specialist or whatever it is, the next year they gave him a $25 million signing bonus. So this is the hypocrisy behind all this. But let's get with Desean. If you're going to make sure that people remember, and I'm talking to America, I want to talk to you, America. If you want to make sure that people remember the atrocities of the Jewish people, you can't on one end tell Negroes in America to forget about slavery. And here's the thing: you have these folks in blackface who are nowadays talking about there's no racism in America. They haven't experienced racism in America, and Black people need to get over. I want y'all to pay attention. Black people need to get over what happened a few years ago. This is a new America. None of you been through slavery. Get over it. Now, imagine this now, Desean Jackson shares something that Hitler is supposed to have said, and the chaos. Why don't they have the same energy? But when it comes to us, but instead they want us to forget about slavery. They don't tell the folks doing 9/11 America makes sure that we remember every year, September 11th, remember 9/11. Every year, if somebody decides to come sideways and say something about the Jewish people, you make them remember that that's what you're saying is being anti-Semitic. You make sure that you tell Black folks to forget about slavery. Now let's think about this. You show us every year the death camps, pictures and videos every year of malnourished Jewish people. But you never show us every year the atrocities that happened during the transatlantic slave trade. You got to the point to where you don't even want to call it the slave trade no more. Now you want to call it the transatlantic migration. We have to forget slavery. We have to rename, we have to accept the renaming of the transatlantic slave trade, but you make sure you remind us that we're being anti-Semitic. You make sure that you remind us that we're being anti-Semitic. Imagine if somebody of celebrity status retweeted or even posted, not even tweet, posted, telling the Jewish people to get over the Holocaust. Imagine the uproar. Imagine the uproar. Of not only the Jewish people, but the people who defend them tooth and nail. Imagine the uproar. If you told a Jewish person to forget the Holocaust, but when it comes to us, we have to forget slavery. We have to forget slavery. If you want to make us remember, because you reminded Desean Jackson of the atrocities that Hitler was doing. You reminded Desean Jackson about the atrocities that Adolf Hitler was doing against the Jewish people. Let's not forget America. Let us not forget, America, that America has had several Adolf Hitlers. Don't just remind Desean and all of us and everybody that's called, that you deem anti-Semitic. Don't just remind us of how bad Adolf Hitler was without reminding us how bad the Adolf Hitlers of America was. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is the issue. This is the issue. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Oh, let's do this right here. let's do this. Let's be reminded, okay? Let us remind America about their Adolf Hitler. Let's remind America about its Adolf Hitler. This is America's Adolf Hitler right here. This is one of America's Adolf Hitler. Okay? Since we always have to remember the atrocities of Adolf Hitler and what he did to the Jewish people, let us remind America, because America seems to have forgotten its own history. This is America's Adolf Hitler staring you right in your face. This is America's Adolf Hitler. He didn't just bring atrocities to one nation of people, but he has brought it to more than one Adolf Hitler. Let's remind it. If we're going to keep score, and if we want to bring the truth out, bring the truth all the way out, that this is the American Adolf Hitler. This guy. How many times a year do we have to hear someone in the government and politics remind us of how great Andrew Jackson was? I heard Shannon Sharp and all these. Oh, you just can't. That's just not smart. Stephen A. Smith. Oh, that's not smart. You can't be using Adolf Hitler. No matter what, you just can't do it. Oh, he done some bad stuff. They said, well, why don't y'all tell all these politicians, Mr. Stephen A. Mr. Stephen A. Mr. Skip Bayless, Mr. Shannon Sharp, Mr. Julian Edelman, and all these others want to come out, Max Kellerman and all these others that wants to remind us how bad Hitler was. Why don't you tell all of the other politicians and everybody else, why don't you tell them about how bad Andrew Jackson was? And why don't you tell them to stop telling Black people and Native Americans to get over it? Let's read. We're gonna read this right here. Andrew Jackson's top list of the worst presidents for Natives. Unlike the statement in the Indian Country Media Network's Best President for Indian Country story, it is a bit easier identifying the worst president for Indian country. 5 tend to stand out with the majority of the rest huddled together after that. Here are our nods to the to the presidents who did more harm than good to Native Americans while in office. Andrew Jackson. And then we talk about we're talking here about the Trail of Tears. Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson, a man nicknamed Indian Killer or Sharp Knife, surely deserves the top spot on the list of worst U.S. presidents. Andrew Jackson was a forceful proponent of Indian removal. According to PBS, others have a less genteel way of describing the 7th president of the United States. Andrew Jackson was a wealthy slave owner and infamous Indian killer. He didn't just do this to one nation. Y'all talk about Adolf Hitler and what he did to the Jewish people. But y'all seem to forget the atrocities of Andrew Jackson against Negroes and Indians. But y'all make sure y'all make sure every year y'all got this dude all in the textbooks, all in history class. We got to hear about him. They named a city Jacksonville after this guy. And every year, going through school, our children have to read and hear about this dude who murdered Indians and Africans, or Indians and Hebrews, who murdered them. Not only was he a wealthy slave owner, but he was an infamous Indian killer, gaining the nickname Sharp Knife from the Cherokee, writes Alma Green. On the website Unsettling America, Decolonization in Theory and Practice. He was also the founder of the Democratic Party. He was also the founder of the Democratic Party. Like I told y'all, I don't get involved in all this because all these folks are liars. While y'all on social media and everywhere fighting over who's the best party. He was the founder of the Democratic Party, demonstrating that genocide against indigenous people is a nonpartisan issue, which means the Democrats and the Republicans and whoever else you want to add in the party, all of these folks are murderers. So the Republicans can't sit around here and talk about how great they were. They did nothing for Black people like that. The Democrats just as bad. Both of them have a bad history. His first effort at Indian fighting was waging a war against the Creeks. President Jefferson had appointed him to appropriate Creek and Cherokee lands. Yeah, you know your boy Jefferson. So now we got Jackson and Jefferson. Both of these jokers. Talk about Thomas Jefferson. We got to learn history about Thomas Jefferson. We got to learn history about Andrew Jackson. All of these dudes is murderers. So if you're going to throw Hitler out there, you might as well throw Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson in the bunch too, as murderers. Just as bad as Adolf Hitler. But y'all don't do that. You don't do that. You want us to be reminded that Hitler was a murderer. But you don't want us to know about the murderers. You don't want us to know about your Adolf Hitlers. Because America has had more than one Adolf Hitler. President Jefferson had appointed him to appropriate Creek and Cherokee lands. In his brutal military campaigns against Indians, Andrew Jackson recommended that troops systematically kill Indian, women, and children after massacres in order to complete the extermination. So guess what? He did the same thing Adolf Hitler did. He did the same thing Adolf Hitler did. Massacred and tried to exterminate a whole race of people. But we don't hear y'all talking about that. We don't hear y'all talking about that. Y'all don't have no terms like anti-Semitic for Negroes. Y'all don't have no term like anti-Semitic for the Indians. Y'all don't come to the Indians' defense, and they helped Joe behind. The Indians helped Joe behind survive through the wintertime. Helped Joe behind survive, and you still killed them. You still killed them folks. The Creeks lost 23 million acres of land. You stole the people land, man. You killed the people, stole their land. The Creeks lost 23 million acres of land in southern Georgia and central Alabama, paving the way for cotton plantation slavery. You killed and took the land of the Creek Indians. You took 23 million acres from them folks, and then you turn around and created cotton plantations, and you brought other people in that you enslaved to do free labor. You worse than Hitler. You worse than Adolf Hitler. Andrew Jackson. But we gotta hear about the glory stories of Andrew Jackson and what Andrew Jackson, the founding fathers. But y'all want us to believe that America was built on the foundation of the Bible? This is what I'm talking about, man. This is what I'm talking about. And then y'all want to paint us as bad because I'm bringing out the truth. I'm telling the truth about this, and then you want to make it seem like I'm doing something bad. Because this is a history that y'all don't want to talk about. But y'all want to hold another man's feet to the fire for sharing something from Adolf Hitler, but you don't want to even hold your own to the fire for all the atrocities that they've done. It absolutely don't make no sense. The biggest hypocrisy in the world. His frontier warfare and subsequent negotiations opened up much of the Southeast U.S. to settle colonialism. Andrew Jackson was not only a genocidal maniac against the indigenous people of the Southwest, he was also racist against African peoples and a scofflaw who violated nearly every standard of justice, and nobody in America did anything about his violations. You know why? Because Thomas Jefferson gave him the go-ahead. See, when you write the laws, you can break them, which is called a hypocrite. This don't make no sense. He was a genocidal maniac. But you want to paint all these guys, Idi Amin, Fidel Castro, you paint all of these guys, Adolf Hitler, all of these guys as wicked, and they've done all these atrocities, but we don't hear stories in school about the atrocities that Andrew Jackson did. Why don't we hear those stories? Can somebody please explain to me, why don't we hear the stories of the atrocities of Andrew Jackson on Indian and African land people? Why don't we hear these stories? Instead, we got to learn about Andrew Jackson and Thomas Jefferson. We got to hear all about the Louisiana Purchase and all this other stuff. But you don't want to talk about how wicked he was. You don't want to talk about the American Hitlers. You don't want to talk about them. He was also a racist against African peoples and scofflaw who violated nearly every standard of justice, according to historian Bertram Wyatt Brown. As a major general in 1818, Andrew Jackson invaded Spanish Florida, chasing fugitive slaves who had escaped with the intent of returning them to their owners, and sparked the first Seminole War. During the conflict, Jackson captured two British men, Alexander George Arbuthnot and Robert Ambrister, who were living among the Seminoles. The Seminoles had resisted Jackson's invasion of their land. One of the men had written about his support for the Seminoles. land and treaty rights in letters found on a boat. Andrew Jackson used the evidence to accuse the men of inciting the Seminole to savage warfare against the U.S. He convened a special martial tribunal, then had the men executed. This dude lied on these British men. Not only is he a murderer of Black people, but he's a murderer of Indians, and now he's a liar against British men. His actions were a study in flagrant disobedience, gross inequality, and premeditated ruthlessness. He swept through Florida, crushed the Indians, executed Arbuthnot and Amherst, and violated nearly every standard of justice, according to historian Wyatt Brown. In 1830, a year after he became president, Jackson signed a law that he had proposed, the Indian Removal Act, which legalized ethnic cleansing. Do y'all hear this? Do y'all hear what this dude is doing? You talk about Adolf Hitler. Look at this dude. We talk about Adolf Hitler. Look what this dude is doing. He passed an act, the Indian Removal Act, which legalized ethnic cleansing. Within 7 years, 46,000 indigenous people were removed from their homelands east of the Mississippi. The removal gave 25 million acres of land to white settlement and to slavery. And we wonder why they got a head start. But you got folks in blackface sitting right here telling us that ain't no head start. White people don't have a head start. We got folks right now telling us foolishness like there's no such thing as racism in America. You got blackface. People who's supposed to be Black, but they're in blackface. And they want us to forget this type of stuff. They don't want to talk about this. And then it's crazy. It's so crazy the things that they putting out here. And this is actual fact. This is actual fact. Their removal gave 25 million acres of land to white settlement and to slavery. According to PBS, the area was home to the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole nations. All these folks. In the Trail of Tears alone, 4,000 Cherokee people died of cold, hunger, and disease on their way to the Western lands. I mean, do I gotta keep going? I mean, look at this. Do I gotta go read about Dwight Eisenhower? Huh? I mean, come on. This stuff don't make no sense. This stuff don't make no sense. We talking about Adolf Hitler. This is the American Adolf Hitler. But we ain't finished yet. We're not finished yet. Let's check this out. Let's get into some more. We're gonna get into some more. In Minnesota, more than 300 Santee Sioux are found guilty of raping and murdering Anglo settlers. Okay, think about this now. 300 Indians, Sioux Indians, are found guilty of rape and murder of white folks and are sentenced to be hung. A month later, President Abraham Lincoln, wait a minute, not Abraham Lincoln, on Mount Rushmore Abraham Lincoln, not the one Abraham Lincoln who everybody, all these blackface want us to believe, oh, he freed the slaves. Black people were Republicans and you should join the Republican Party and all this other stuff. All this other stuff. In Minnesota, we talk about Abraham Lincoln. We just read about Thomas Jefferson, and we also just read about Andrew Jackson. Now, what did good old Abraham Lincoln do? President Abraham Lincoln commuted all but 39 of the death sentences. One of the Indians was granted a last-minute reprieve, but the other 38 were hanged simultaneously on December 26 in a bizarre mass execution witnessed by a large crowd of approving Minnesotans. The Sioux Indians were found guilty of joining in the so-called Minnesota Uprising, which was actually part of the wider Indian wars that plagued the West during the second half of the 19th century. For nearly half a century, Anglo settlers, listen to this, the same one they were accused of raping, Anglo settlers invaded, wait a minute. So the same folks that invaded these folks' land, the same folks that took, because when they invaded the lands, they were when they invaded lands, not only did they kill folks, but they also raped their women and their children. These same Anglo settlers who invaded the Sioux Indians' land. But you accusing the Sioux Indians of raping them and you sentenced them to be hung. You sentenced them to be hung. But you didn't talk about how they invaded their land. Anglo settlers invaded the Santee Sioux territory in the beautiful Minnesota Valley, and government pressure gradually forced the Indians to relocate to smaller reservations along the Minnesota River. Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. This your boy Andrew Jackson, though. And this the American government. These folks invaded those folks' land. Remember, Anglo settlers, you are settlers. You came from another place into someone else's land and decided you want to take their land after they helped you. If we're going to be reminded of Adolf Hitler and the atrocities that he did, make sure you remind America of their Adolf Hitlers. Make sure you remind America of that. Anglo settlers invaded Santee Sioux territory in the beautiful Minnesota Valley, and government pressure gradually forced the Indians to relocate to smaller reservations along the Indian River. At the reservations, the Santee were badly mistreated by corrupt federal Indian agents and contractors. During July 1862, the agents pushed the Indians to the brink of starvation by refusing to distribute stores of food because they had not yet received their customary kickback payments. Contractors callously ignored the Santee's plea for help. Outraged and at the limits of their endurance, the Santee finally struck back, killing Anglo settlers and taking women as hostages. The initial efforts of the U.S. Army to stop the Santee warriors failed, and in battle at Birch Coulee, Santee Indians killed 13 American soldiers and wounded another 47 soldiers. However, on September 23rd, a force under the leadership of General Henry H. Sibley finally defeated the main body of the Santee warriors at Wood Lake, recovering many of the hostages and forcing most of the Indians to surrender. The subsequent trail of the prisoners gave little attention to the injustice the Indians had suffered on the reservation and largely catered to the popular desire for revenge. However, President Lincoln's commutations of the majority of the death sentences clearly reflected his understanding that the Minnesota uprising had been rooted in a long history of Anglo abuse of the Santee Sioux. Come on, man. Like, this stuff got to stop, man. This stuff got to stop, America. Come on, man. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, and a whole slew of other presidents were no different than Adolf Hitler.